The Galactic Council had existed for over 12,000 years, a shining beacon of cooperation among the stars. Hundreds of species had joined its ranks, each bringing their own culture, technology, and wisdom. But among all the legends whispered in the grand halls of the Council's floating citadel, none seemed more fantastical than the tales of humans, a species so volatile, so unpredictable, that most believed they were nothing more than myth. Katniss stood at the observation deck of the Council warship Eternal Harmony, her dark eyes fixed on the swirling nebula beyond. She was a Valarian, a species known for their diplomatic prowess and logical minds. Her silver skin shimmered under the artificial lights, and her delicate features betrayed no emotion as she reviewed the tactical displays. The war against the Krell Dominion had been devastating. World after world had fallen to their relentless assault, and the Council's forces were stretched impossibly thin. Ambassador Katniss, a voice crackled through her communicator. "We've received word from the Outer Rim. Another colony has gone dark." She closed her eyes briefly, allowing herself a moment of grief before her training reasserted itself. How many does that make? 17 in the last rotation. 17 worlds. Billions of lives. The Krell showed no mercy, no interest in negotiation. They simply consumed, expanded, and destroyed. The Council's carefully orchestrated strategies, perfected over millennia of peace, were utterly ineffective against an enemy that cared nothing for diplomacy or reason. "There must be something we haven't considered," Katniss murmured to herself. It was then that the communication array lit up with an incoming transmission, one that bore no recognized identification signature. The bridge crew exchanged nervous glances. Unknown vessels in Council space were either pirates or Krell scouts, and neither option was pleasant. "Unidentified vessel, you are entering restricted space," the communications officer announced. "Identify yourself immediately." The response came in a language the translation matrix struggled to process at first, but when it finally parsed the words, a chill ran through the bridge. "This is Captain Knox of the Terran Federation vessel Indomitable Spirit. We received your distress beacon. Looks like you could use a hand. Terran, human." The bridge erupted in whispers. Katniss felt her heart skip a beat. Humans were supposed to be extinct, or more accurately, they were supposed to have never existed at all. Old spacer tales told of a death world species, one that had evolved under impossibly harsh conditions, whose very biology was an affront to the peaceful nature of civilized space. They were said to be warriors without equal, survivors who thrived in conditions that would kill any other species. But they were just stories, weren't they? "Permission to come aboard?" Knox's voice was casual, almost amused. Katniss found her voice. "Permission granted, but know that any hostile action will be met with immediate defensive measures. Wouldn't have it any other way." "Ambassador." 20 minutes later, Katniss stood in the docking bay as the human ship connected. When the airlock finally opened, she got her first look at a human in the flesh. Knox was taller than most species she'd encountered. He wore a battered military uniform, and scars crisscrossed his tan skin. His eyes, a striking shade of blue, held a warmth that seemed at odds with his warrior's bearing. Behind him, a dozen other humans filed out, each carrying equipment and weapons that looked crude by Council standards, but undeniably effective. "Ambassador Katniss, I presume?" Knox extended his hand. She stared at it for a moment before remembering the human custom. His grip was firm, confident. "Captain Knox, we thought your people were myths." He grinned. "We get that a lot. Truth is, we've been out here the whole time, just keeping to ourselves mostly. But when we picked up your distress signals, well," he shrugged, "couldn't just sit by and watch. You understand what you're volunteering for?" Katniss asked. "The Krell are unlike any enemy you've faced." Knox's expression hardened. "Ambassador, humans have fought wars since before we learned to make fire. We've battled each other, our own planet, diseases, famine, and extinction events. We're still here. The Krell," he checked his weapon with practiced ease, "they're just another item on the list." Over the following weeks, Katniss watched in amazement as Knox and his team integrated with the Council forces. Where other species saw impossible odds, humans saw challenges to overcome. Where careful planning would take days, humans improvised solutions in hours. They were reckless, certainly, but their recklessness was tempered by an instinct for survival that bordered on supernatural. The turning point came at the Battle of the Sar Prime. The Krell had deployed their full armada, intent on breaking the Council's last defensive line. Katniss stood on the bridge, watching the tactical display with growing horror as enemy ships outnumbered theirs. 3-1, all ships, fall back to defensive positions, the fleet commander ordered, his voice trembling. Prepare for evacuation protocols. Belay that order. Knox's voice cut through the channel. Captain Knox, you have no authority. I have ships, and I have a plan. You want to save the Sar Prime or not? Katniss watched as the human vessels, small and seemingly insignificant compared to the massive Council dreadnoughts, shot forward into the Krell formation. They moved with a coordination that seemed impossible, weaving through enemy fire, targeting weak points, drawing the Krell's attention away from the main fleet. They're insane, someone whispered. No, Katniss said quietly. They're human. Knox's voice came through again, calm despite the chaos around him. All Council ships, when I give the signal, concentrate all fire on the Krell command carrier. We'll make an opening. What happened next would be studied in military academies for generations. The humans executed a maneuver so dangerous, so counterintuitive, that no simulation would have predicted its success. They lured the Krell fleet into a cluster formation, then detonated their own damaged ships in a cascade that disrupted the enemy's shields. Now, Knox shouted, the Council fleet fired as one, and the Krell command carrier exploded in a brilliant flash. Without their coordination node, the Krell fleet fell into disarray. The battle that should have been a massacre became a rout. When Knox returned to the eternal harmony, his uniform scorched and his face streaked with soot, Katniss met him in the docking bay. This time, she didn't wait for him to extend his hand. She pulled him into an embrace, a gesture of deep respect in Valarian culture. You saved us, she said simply. Knox smiled tiredly. We're not myths, Ambassador. We're just survivors. And now, maybe, we're allies. As Katniss watched the human crew celebrate their victory, she realized that the galaxy would never be the same. Humanity had taken the front line, and in doing so, they had reminded every species in the Council of a fundamental truth. Sometimes, the best hope for peace is those willing to fight for it. The myths had become reality, and reality, it turned out, was far more impressive than any legend.